some indications that Timothy Geithner, the former Secretary of the Treasury, is whistleblowing against the banking cabal. And if anybody has any information, please either put it in the chat room, or if you're shy, email it to fieldmcc@yahoo.com. The answer to your question specifically, David, is not only would they never put a whole SEAL team in one flying vehicle, more likely, and I think by protocol, they use 3 flying vehicles. Not only that, in the case of the SEALs and the Chinook helicopters, there's only one Army unit that is used by the SEALs, and that Army unit and their special helicopters was not the unit nor the helicopter that killed the SEAL team. And the reason the SEAL team needed to be quiet was because they would know that none of them caught Osama bin Laden. So anyway, I think the myth that used to be Barry Soetoro, and then the paperclip identity that many people think is Barack Hussein Obama, I think those days are over. David, over to you.
Yeah, that's right, Phil. So I'll keep going with this paragraph. So United States Marine Field McConnell has linked Valerie Jarrett's née Bowman, Ruder, Loop, Crooks in Chicago to the Navy SEALs who witnessed an alleged HAC, that's Honorable Artillery Company, founded in 1537, incidentally, but tracing its roots back to 1087, so it's been around 1,000 years, doing the hit jobs for the City of London, which was formed, I would say, pretty soon after the Roman occupation. That's where the traders came together to make kit and hire gladiators and various pedophile activities and services for the Romans. Probably managed to corrupt the Romans, actually. Apparently the white slaves from Anglo-Saxonia were highly prized in the slave markets of Rome because they were very beautiful young boys that were blonde. So apparently that excited a lot of Romans. So we've got a bad history of corrupting the Roman Empire, Field. But you might have some comments on that. Anyway, I digress. False flag attack on May the 1st, 2011 on a bin Laden doppelganger corpse in Abbottabad, Pakistan, and who in consequence were killed as a collective whistleblower unit while being transported in a Chinook helicopter. Now, if you look at the photographs of the guy who's alleged to be Osama bin Laden after he was shot, I imagine what you're seeing is a collage, and Craig is brilliant with the collages here, maybe he can take a look at this, but they seem to have taken the teeth of an older photograph of Osama bin Laden when he was in his prime. That was before he got into the dialysis unit in the Tora Bora caves, supplied by the people out of the United Arab Emirates, and clipped it into some other guy and basically made a collage together and presented that to the sheeple through Fox News. Now, just to remind people, Bettina Jordan Barber of the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense was selling the keys for the Brooder Loop communication system. These would be time-lapse keys to Rupert Murdoch and his Fox News agents starting in 2004 and running right through to January of last year, when it would appear the binding mechanism for this treason, which was the partial birth pedophile services out of Hull House in Chicago, was shut down as a result of Abel Danger's work. And whether or not Bettina Jordan Barber was arrested, I'm not sure. I think she was retained, Field. We can perhaps find that out on the payroll of the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense, because she was still providing this extremely valuable service to Fox News of selling the Brooder Loop key. Now, what is a Brooder Loop key? Well, a Brooder Loop key would allow you to bypass the regular communication between the legitimate forces of a sovereign state, such as the United States Air Force or the FBI or even the CIA, and actually set up what is known as a man-in-the-middle attack, where you inject news from your mobile tactical radios and images that are presented on the television to the public to support a wag the dog story, which is pre-scripted. So what we have now, and it's just uncanny how the internet has swung over to support Abel Danger, with agents that feel you and I will probably never meet and we'll never know, but someone has put onto the internet the date and possibly the minutes, and the enemy or our enemies don't know whether they did or they didn't, the minutes of a meeting between Lester Crown and Valerie Jarrett of the 29th of April of 2010 in the White House. Why does that matter? Well, the minutes seem to indicate that Valerie Jarrett and Lester Crown were working out what kind of events were necessary to make sure that this clown got re-elected in the election of last year, which was cooked and totally from woe to go. So we can infer from those minutes, since they've been concealed from us, and remember, Field, what the spoliation inference is that if we have evidence that they have engaged in spoliation of evidence, the party doing the spoliation immediately loses the presumption of innocence and has to be presumed guilty by Joe Sheeple or Joe Sixpack or whatever you like to call it, and it's up to them to prove that those minutes, for example, don't exist. And I think they're going to have a great deal of problems. So let's go into that room where Valerie Jarrett met with Lester Crown on the 29th of April of 2010 and look at the minutes as they're being written by her assistants or her bodyguards, because all of these people have same-sex bodyguards of ages indeterminate. But in the case of Barry Swatara, I guess he became a same-sex bodyguard at the age of something like 8 years old in Jakarta, when he was being groomed by a transvestite male prostitute nanny called Turdy, which seems to be an appropriate name for a back passage relationship. But again, I digress. Where was I, Field? I've got a bit lost in my own rhetoric. Over to you.
Yeah, I don't know what you were talking about, but I wanted to jump in anyway and say something thoughtful, perhaps even erudite. But when it comes to man-in-the-middle attack, that's what I allege occurred on April 10th of 2010, because the timing is very suspect for having this aircraft accident on the exact 70th anniversary of the previous Smolensk massacre. I think the British bankers and their what would you call them? Confederates? No, that's not right. Anyway, they're co-defendants looking forward. The British bankers, the American bankers that I have started calling the Buffett Brigade, which is a play on words with Warren Buffett, who will be very lucky to stay out of prison. In fact, he might die before he can get in prison, but that's where he's hidden one way or the other. Warren Buffett is one of the major players in the United States of America that supported the attack of America on 9/11 by the Canadians and the Brits. The Canadians were duped. The Brits weren't. They know what they're doing. They've been doing this for 500 years. And that's what they did this on the 10th of April of 2010. They set up an aviation accident, and they did it because of the timing. It would look like the Russians had done it. But the Russians were vilified, and the Brits were concealed. But they're not concealed any longer. Which reminds me, if I were Piers Morgan, I think I'd find a new job on a new continent before somebody finds you, you little feather duster. But rather than threaten Piers Morgan, because I think he might get his ladies' underwear in a bunch, and he might run to the FBI or Dianne Feinstein and request that all Louisville slugger bats get banned from America. Because Louisville slugger bats are, according to the FBI, is the single item that's most often used in a brutal attack, human on human, in the United States of America. So rather than worry about trying to take guns from people in Wisconsin who aren't going to let you, maybe Dianne Fine, what's her name? Fine Jerk, Fine Steam, Fine Cheese, Fine Facade, whatever her name is, that senator from out west that works for the Wicked Witch, she might find a bat would fit very nicely somewhere and not on her head. I find it interesting that these people that consider themselves elite, elite must be a French word for excrement, because they are excrement, which is a terribly disrespectful thing to say to excrement. I mean, it's sort of like calling Elena, Maria, Hillary, Michelle. If I were to characterize them as people that would be very well suited to live on the Isle of Dogs, that would be a terribly offensive thing to say to the canine world. So, David, I, like you, have forgotten what you asked me. I'm sure I answered it, so why don't you